We live in a world that never stops moving. From the moment we wake, we are urged to run faster, achieve more, accomplish more, be more. We chase grades, promotions, recognition, experiences, and approval, believing that happiness is always just around the corner, waiting for us at the next milestone. And so we run, we hurry, we strive. But somewhere along the way, we forget to ask the simplest, yet most important question: what are we running toward? The truth is, happiness is not a destination. It is not waiting at the end of a finish line that constantly moves ahead of us. The harder we chase it, the more it slips away. We measure our worth by accomplishments, our value by approval, and our success by accumulation. And yet, no matter how much we achieve or acquire, the feeling of contentment often eludes us. We run toward the future so relentlessly that we forget the most profound reality. Happiness is not in the next achievement. It is in the pause, the stillness that allows us to recognize life as it is, here and now. Pausing is not weakness. Pausing is strength. It takes courage to stop in a world that prizes constant motion. It takes courage to look inward when distractions and noise are everywhere, to sit with ourselves, to breathe, and to face the truth of who we are. When we pause, we begin to notice things we have ignored while running. Our thoughts, our feelings, our needs, and the beauty that already surrounds us. We start to see that happiness is not something we must chase, because it is already present in moments we have been too busy to notice. Think about a river rushing over rocks. The water moves fast, yet its speed does not define its depth. Real life is like that river. Constant motion without awareness is shallow, noisy, and exhausting. Real joy and contentment come when we allow ourselves to be still for a moment, to feel the depth beneath the surface, to experience life fully rather than as a blur of activity. When we pause, clarity emerges. When we pause, priorities become visible. When we pause, we can finally distinguish between what truly matters and what only feels urgent. Pausing does not mean giving up on dreams or abandoning goals. It means reclaiming our lives from the tyranny of constant striving. It means learning to live intentionally, to act consciously, and to engage fully with the present. In those moments of stillness, we recognize that our worth is not tied to outcomes, that our value is not measured by achievements, and that life itself is enough to be appreciated without constant pursuit. Happiness is not a reward for doing more. It is a recognition of what is already here, waiting to be felt, savored, and embraced. The paradox is simple. The harder we chase happiness, the further it moves from us. The faster we run, the more exhausted we become, and the more we miss the very moments that contain it. But when we pause, even briefly, the world transforms. A breath becomes a gift, a smile becomes a treasure, a conversation becomes meaningful. Life, which once seemed like a blur, becomes vivid, rich, and alive. We realize that happiness is not found in the next achievement, the next possession, or the next milestone. It is discovered in awareness, in presence, in the courage to stop and see what is already around us. Pausing also teaches us patience, humility, and gratitude. It reminds us that we do not have to control everything, that not every moment must be maximized, and that perfection is an illusion. In the stillness, we reconnect with ourselves and with the world. We discover that peace is not somewhere else. It is here, already within us, waiting for us to notice it. And once we notice, once we stop running and breathe, the frantic pursuit loses its power, and the simple joy of being alive takes its place. Happiness is never about speed. It is never about accumulation. It is never about proving ourselves to the world. It is about presence. It is about awareness. It is about pausing long enough to feel the life that is already unfolding in front of us. It is about the courage to stop chasing and start noticing. It is about the wisdom to realize that the most profound moments of joy, clarity, and peace are not ahead of us. They are here, always waiting, always accessible, and always enough. We often grow up believing that life is a straight line with a finish line at the end, a place where all the waiting, striving, and struggling will finally be rewarded with happiness, fulfillment, and peace. From childhood, society conditions us to believe that success is cumulative, that every achievement is a step closer to some ultimate state of satisfaction. In school, we chase grades, believing that the report card will finally give us recognition. Later, we pursue scholarships, jobs, and promotions, convinced that each new milestone will be the moment we can finally breathe, relax, and feel content. And yet, when we reach these so-called finish lines, we often discover that the satisfaction is fleeting, temporary, or even non-existent. The moment we thought we would feel accomplished and secure passes quickly, leaving behind only the urge to chase the next thing, the next goal, the next opportunity. The illusion lies in the belief that happiness exists as a distant destination, something to be earned or achieved. Life becomes a continuous relay race in which we hand ourselves from one objective to the next without pause, thinking that crossing a finish line will provide clarity, purpose, and a sense of peace. But each finish line moves. Once we achieve one goal, the definition of the next finish line shifts, often without us realizing it. The promotion we wanted becomes less meaningful. Once we see a higher position, the degree we worked for loses its glow. When we meet someone else who seems to have achieved more, and the house we dreamed of suddenly feels too small when compared with someone else's mansion. Happiness becomes an elusive mirage because it is never fixed. It is always projected into the future, dependent on external circumstances and the shifting sands of comparison. The danger of this illusion is subtle but powerful. It convinces us that we are incomplete, that our current selves are insufficient, and that only by pushing further can we achieve the peace we desire. We begin to equate movement with progress, believing that if we stop, we will fall behind or miss out on something vital. In reality, this endless motion often leads us away from what truly matters. We work longer hours not out of passion, but out of a fear of inadequacy. We accumulate wealth or possessions not because they bring joy, but because they represent a symbolic marker of progress. We chase relationships or social validation, as if the approval of others could somehow fill the gap we refuse to acknowledge in ourselves. And in all this running, we rarely pause to ask whether the destination we are chasing is meaningful, or whether it is simply a mirage designed to keep us moving. The finish line illusion affects every aspect of our lives. In careers, it manifests as the constant pursuit of promotion or recognition, never allowing ourselves to fully appreciate our current achievements. In education, students obsess over grades, rankings, and certifications, rarely stopping to savor the learning process or reflect on personal growth. In personal life, people chase relationships, social status, or experiences as if these external markers can finally validate their existence. Even in hobbies and passions, the same pattern emerges. We measure our value by what we can achieve or how far we can push ourselves rather than by the joy and fulfillment these activities bring in the present moment. This illusion is reinforced by culture, media, and social expectations. Everywhere we look, there are stories of people who have achieved the next milestone, seemingly filled with happiness, prompting us to believe that if we just reach that level, we too will feel complete. Social media magnifies this effect exponentially, showing curated snapshots of achievement, wealth, and success, making us feel perpetually behind in the race we never agreed to join. We compare our lives to these images and stories, setting new finish lines for ourselves, often unconsciously, and perpetuating a cycle of constant striving. Yet there is a paradox hidden within the illusion of the finish line. The closer we get to it, the less satisfying it becomes. Achieving the goal we longed for often reveals not peace, but a new set of desires. We realize that the milestone we imagined would bring lasting joy only provided a brief moment of satisfaction before our minds shifted to the next target. This pattern creates a subtle dissatisfaction, an underlying restlessness that is hard to shake, because the problem is not with our efforts, our achievements, or our circumstances. It is with the very structure of our thinking. By treating happiness as a distant destination, we continually postpone it, tethering our sense of fulfillment to something we cannot permanently grasp. Some of the most profound realizations about the illusion of the finish line come from observing those who have achieved great success, yet remain unfulfilled. Many high-achieving individuals confess that the goals they spent years chasing, whether in career, wealth, or fame, did not deliver the sense of completion they expected. Instead, they found themselves seeking the next achievement or struggling with the emptiness left behind by the attainment of what once seemed vital. This suggests that happiness is not a point to be reached, but a quality to be cultivated. a state of being rather than a prize to be claimed. Breaking free from this illusion requires a conscious shift in perspective. It requires acknowledging that life is not a linear progression toward a single destination, but a series of moments, each with its own value and meaning. It involves learning to appreciate the process itself, rather than being consumed by the results. It means embracing the present, not as a stepping stone, but as a place where fulfillment can exist here and now. This does not mean abandoning ambition or goals, but rather approaching them with awareness, gratitude, and acceptance, understanding that the end point is not the ultimate measure of our worth or happiness. When we begin to see the finish line for what it truly is, a construct of expectation rather than an absolute reality, we open ourselves to a deeper form of freedom. We can pursue goals without being enslaved by them, experience joy without waiting for future validation, and recognize that contentment is not found at the end of the road, but along it. Pausing, reflecting, and observing our own desires allows us to disentangle the chase from our sense of self, revealing that we are already complete in ways that achievement alone cannot provide. In our modern world, motion is often mistaken for progress. We move from task to task, meeting to meeting, project to project, assuming that the business of our days equates to meaningful advancement. There is a subtle cultural conditioning behind this belief. Productivity is praised, urgency is rewarded, and visible action is celebrated as proof of worth. From the moment we wake until the moment we sleep, there is a constant pressure to do more, achieve more, and accumulate more. We check emails, scroll endlessly on our devices, plan multiple agendas, and fill every available moment with activity. But beneath this surface of movement, there is often little true growth, understanding, or transformation. Motion alone, without intention or reflection, does not produce progress. The problem lies in equating quantity with quality. Doing many things does not guarantee that we are doing the right things, nor does it ensure that our efforts are aligned with our values or goals. A person can be endlessly busy, completing tasks and ticking boxes, yet feel empty, exhausted, and unfulfilled at the end of the day. The appearance of progress can mask stagnation, creating an illusion that keeps us trapped in relentless activity. We may be moving fast, but if the direction is unclear or the motion lacks depth, we are not moving toward anything that truly matters. In many ways, this is one of the quietest forms of self-deception, because it convinces us that we are productive, ambitious, and capable, while in reality we are merely spinning wheels. Constant motion also fragments the mind. When we rush from one task to the next without pause, reflection, or rest, we scatter our attention and dilute our focus. Multitasking, often celebrated as a skill, further erodes our capacity to engage deeply with anything. Important ideas go unexamined, meaningful relationships are neglected, and creative insight becomes difficult to access. The business becomes both the cause and the effect of superficial engagement, leaving us with the sense of having done much while having accomplished little of lasting value. True progress, by contrast, requires concentrated attention, thoughtful consideration, and deliberate action, none of which are nurtured by perpetual motion. The culture of constant motion has seeped into nearly every domain of life. In the workplace, employees are measured by hours worked, emails answered, or meetings attended rather than by the quality of their contributions or the alignment of their efforts with strategic purpose. In education, students are rewarded for completing assignments on time, memorizing information, and producing high grades, often at the expense of curiosity, understanding, and personal growth. Even in personal life, people overfill their schedules with social obligations, hobbies, and errands, mistaking a packed calendar for a rich and meaningful existence. In all these contexts, activity is valorized as if it were progress itself, while reflection, rest, and discernment are undervalued or even stigmatized. There is a deeper psychological mechanism at work as well. Motion, even when unproductive, can give us a sense of control and purpose. It provides a tangible measure of our effort, a visible way to justify our existence and our choices. When we are constantly moving, there is less time to confront uncomfortable questions about whether our actions are meaningful or aligned with our deeper aspirations. Business becomes a shield, preventing introspection and protecting us from the realization that much of what we pursue may not bring genuine fulfillment. In this sense, motion is seductive, addictive even, because it masks the void that can only be confronted in stillness and contemplation. The distinction between motion and progress becomes even clearer when we consider nature. A river rushing over rocks moves swiftly, yet the water itself may not advance significantly in terms of reaching its destination. It may swirl, churn, and encounter obstacles, expending energy without real direction. Similarly, a tree in a storm may bend and sway in the wind, but the essence of its growth occurs quietly, rooted in a slow and steady absorption of nutrients and sunlight. Nature teaches us that real growth is often subtle, incremental, and invisible, occurring beneath the surface rather than in flashy displays of activity. Progress, like growth, requires depth, alignment, and intention, qualities that cannot be measured merely by speed or business. To break free from the trap of constant motion, one must cultivate awareness. Pausing, reflecting, and asking hard questions about the purpose and impact of our actions are essential steps in distinguishing true progress from mere motion. Are the tasks we perform aligned with our values? Are they moving us toward meaningful goals? Are we learning, growing, or creating something that matters? Without such introspection, we risk perpetuating cycles of activity that provide the illusion of progress while leaving our deeper needs unmet. Awareness is not passive. It is an active choice to engage with life thoughtfully, to slow down, and to measure action by its contribution rather than by its visibility or busyness. There is also a moral and emotional dimension to this issue. Constant motion without progress often results in stress, anxiety, and a persistent sense of inadequacy. We compare our activity to that of others, fearing that we are falling behind, and we push ourselves to maintain momentum, even when exhausted. This relentless pressure can erode health, relationships, and creativity, leaving us depleted and disillusioned. In contrast, progress-oriented action, tempered with reflection and mindfulness, nurtures resilience, satisfaction, and meaningful achievement. It reminds us that the measure of a life well lived is not how many things we do, but how intentionally and purposefully we engage with the things that matter most. Throughout history, many thinkers, writers, and leaders have recognized this truth. The wisdom imparted through philosophy, literature, and spiritual practice consistently emphasizes the value of reflection, patience, and deliberate action. Whether in meditation, study, or creative work, the principle is the same. Moving less does not mean achieving less. True progress emerges from clarity, focus, and alignment, not from the frenetic accumulation of tasks or achievements. Yet the temptation to confuse motion with progress persists, because it is easier to act without thinking than to pause and confront the deeper questions about purpose and direction. Breaking the habit of constant motion requires courage and discipline. It means resisting the societal pressure to be always active, visible, and busy. It means embracing stillness as an essential part of growth, recognizing that reflection and intentionality are not wasted time, but essential elements of meaningful action. It also involves prioritizing depth over breadth, understanding that the quality of our efforts determines their impact far more than the quantity of actions performed. This shift is not instantaneous. It requires ongoing practice, patience, and a willingness to confront discomfort, uncertainty, and the fear of being perceived as idle or unproductive. In a world that prizes speed, achievement, and relentless activity, pausing is often mistaken for weakness. We are taught that progress requires constant motion, that the relentless pursuit of goals is a sign of dedication and discipline. Yet the truth is that pausing is not a sign of surrender, hesitation, or laziness. It is in fact one of the most courageous and powerful acts a person can undertake. To stop in the middle of a storm, to resist the pressure to keep moving when every voice around you demands acceleration, requires clarity, strength, and self-awareness. It is a deliberate choice to face reality, rather than fleeing from it through distraction, busyness, or perpetual activity. The act of pausing allows us to step out of the automatic patterns that dominate our daily lives. Most of us operate on autopilot for the majority of our waking hours, moving from one task to the next, consumed by schedules, notifications, and obligations. In this state, our actions are guided more by habit than intention, by external pressures rather than inner purpose. By choosing to pause, we interrupt this cycle. We create space for reflection, for observation, and for conscious decision-making. Pausing gives us the rare opportunity to ask ourselves, am I heading in the right direction? Am I living in accordance with my values? Am I responding to life, or merely reacting to it? Pausing also cultivates mental and emotional resilience. Life is unpredictable, and challenges often arrive with little warning. Without the ability to pause, we risk responding impulsively to situations, allowing anger, fear, or stress to dictate our choices. When we pause, even briefly, we give ourselves the chance to breathe, to gain perspective, and to choose a response aligned with our deeper intentions rather than our fleeting emotions. Strength is not measured solely by how quickly we act or how much we endure, but by the quality and wisdom of our responses. In this sense, pausing is an act of mastery over oneself, a demonstration that we are capable of controlling our minds, even when the world seems chaotic. There is also a profound courage in pausing, because it requires facing what we often avoid. Silence, stillness, and reflection can be uncomfortable, revealing truths about ourselves that we might prefer to ignore. Pausing forces us to confront uncertainty, dissatisfaction, and fear. It asks us to acknowledge that we do not always have the answers, that our lives are not perfectly aligned, and that our ambitions and actions may not always serve our well-being. It is easier to keep moving, to stay busy, and to distract ourselves from these uncomfortable truths. Yet choosing to pause demonstrates a remarkable inner strength, a willingness to meet life with honesty and presence rather than denial. Pausing is also essential for cultivating clarity and insight. When we move too quickly, decisions are made hastily, problems are addressed superficially, and opportunities for growth are often missed. The mind, like a muscle, requires rest and focus in order to function optimally. By taking the time to pause, we allow our thoughts to settle, our priorities to realign, and our creativity to emerge. Some of the most important breakthroughs, ideas, and realizations occur not in the midst of frantic activity, but in moments of stillness and reflection. Pausing provides the fertile ground in which clarity can grow, enabling us to act with precision and purpose, rather than reacting impulsively or mechanically. In relationships, pausing is equally powerful. It allows us to listen more deeply, to respond with empathy, and to act with consideration rather than in haste. How often do misunderstandings escalate because one or both parties fail to pause and truly hear each other? By pausing before responding, we create a space in which understanding, patience, and compassion can flourish. Strength in human connection is not always displayed through assertiveness or dominance. It is often found in the restraint and wisdom to pause, reflect, and respond with thoughtfulness. History and human experience provide countless examples of the power of pausing. Leaders, thinkers, and artists throughout time have recognized that reflection is not a luxury, but a necessity for meaningful action. Strategic pauses in military campaigns, moments of contemplation before critical decisions, and periods of silence and meditation in creative processes all demonstrate that the ability to stop and reflect is intimately linked with effectiveness, wisdom, and resilience. In every case, those who mastered the art of pausing often accomplished more, not because they were idle, but because they acted with insight, intention, and precision rather than haste. Pausing also teaches humility. In a culture that glorifies constant activity, taking a step back can feel countercultural, even radical. It requires the humility to admit that we cannot control everything, that we do not have to have all the answers immediately, and that sometimes the best action is inaction. This humility is not weakness. It is a recognition of our humanity, a conscious choice to respect the natural rhythm of life rather than attempting to force outcomes through relentless effort alone. Strength, therefore, is not measured by how much we can do at any given moment, but by how wisely we choose when to act and when to refrain. Even physically, the act of pausing strengthens us. Athletes, dancers, and performers understand the importance of rest and recovery. Without it, performance declines and injury becomes more likely. The same principle applies to the mind and spirit. Continuous motion without pause depletes energy, diminishes creativity, and erodes emotional balance. By integrating deliberate pauses into our routines, we restore vitality, enhance focus, and build the endurance necessary for sustained effort. In this way, pausing is an investment, a deliberate strengthening of the foundation upon which meaningful action can occur. Finally, pausing nurtures presence and mindfulness. In moments of stillness, we become aware of our surroundings, our thoughts, and our feelings. We reconnect with the present moment rather than constantly projecting ourselves into the future or dwelling in the past. This presence is a quiet form of strength, a recognition that life is happening now, and that our ability to engage fully with it is the greatest measure of our power. Pausing allows us to reclaim control over our attention, to choose where we invest our energy, and to participate in life with awareness rather than distraction. In the world we inhabit, accumulation is often celebrated as the measure of success. Wealth, possessions, experiences, and accolades are constantly presented as the markers of a life well lived. From the earliest stages of life, we are conditioned to seek more material goods, more achievements, more recognition. Advertisements encourage us to buy the latest products. Schools and workplaces reward performance with certificates and promotions, and social media continuously shows curated images of what more looks like. We begin to equate abundance with happiness, believing that by gathering enough, we will finally feel fulfilled. Yet no matter how much we acquire, the sense of satisfaction often slips through our fingers, leaving us chasing the next thing, the next experience, or the next validation. Accumulation creates an illusion of control and completeness. We think that if we can gather enough wealth, knowledge, or possessions, we will finally be secure, happy, or recognized. The more we collect, the more we believe we are shaping our destiny, but this is a fragile foundation because external accumulation is never truly sufficient. There will always be more to want, more to achieve, and more to compare ourselves against. In this sense, accumulation becomes a treadmill. The effort feels purposeful, but the finish line keeps moving, and the satisfaction it promises is perpetually postponed. We fill our lives with objects, titles, or experiences, yet the emptiness remains because the act of gathering cannot compensate for the absence of presence and awareness. Awareness, in contrast, offers a different path. It asks us to look inward, to observe the quality of our experiences, the depth of our engagement, and the alignment of our actions with our values. Awareness is not passive, it is active attention, deliberate focus, and conscious perception of what is happening both within us and around us. By cultivating awareness, we shift our attention from what we can accumulate externally to what we can understand internally. We begin to notice the fleeting satisfaction of possessions, the temporary nature of accolades, and the hollowness of chasing recognition for its own sake. Awareness helps us see the patterns of desire and attachment that drive accumulation and invites us to consider whether these pursuits truly serve our well-being. The difference between accumulation and awareness can be observed in the way we experience life's simplest moments. When we are focused on acquiring or achieving, even the most beautiful experiences are filtered through the lens of what next. A meal is not fully enjoyed if we are thinking about the next snack or the next event. A conversation is not fully heard if we are planning our response or comparing ourselves to others. A scenic view loses its impact if we are reaching for a camera to document it rather than letting ourselves be immersed in the experience. Awareness, on the other hand, invites us to inhabit each moment fully, to engage with our senses, thoughts, and emotions without the constant overlay of desire for more. In this presence, even small and ordinary experiences acquire depth, richness, and meaning. Accumulation often feeds comparison and envy. The more we collect, the more we measure ourselves against others, wondering if our possessions, achievements, or experiences are enough. Social media amplifies this tendency, presenting an endless stream of curated highlights that create pressure to keep up, to acquire more, and to display more. Awareness allows us to disengage from this cycle. It encourages us to recognize the impermanence of external markers, to observe the habits of comparison without being consumed by them, and to understand that true contentment is cultivated internally rather than sourced externally. In this sense, awareness is a stabilizing force that grounds us in what is real and meaningful, rather than what is merely visible or measurable. Awareness over accumulation also reshapes the way we relate to our possessions and resources. Instead of seeking more simply for the sake of having, we begin to ask whether what we own or pursue truly contributes to our well-being or the well-being of others. Minimalism, simplicity, and intentional living are expressions of this principle, not because they reject abundance outright, but because they prioritize discernment, clarity, and purpose. When we are aware, we recognize that excess can weigh us down, distract us, and even impoverish our sense of self, whereas mindful engagement with what we already have can provide satisfaction, gratitude, and freedom. The focus shifts from quantity to quality, from accumulation to appreciation, and from seeking to noticing. Awareness also deepens our relationships. In a mindset driven by accumulation, we may seek connections for what they can provide: status, influence, validation, or experiences. Relationships risk becoming transactional, measured by what each person brings or achieves. Awareness shifts the focus from external gain to genuine presence. By truly observing and listening to others, we cultivate empathy, understanding, and meaningful connection. Relationships then become a source of mutual growth and fulfillment, rather than competition or acquisition. In this way, awareness enriches not only our inner lives, but also the lives of those around us. Furthermore, awareness fosters resilience in the face of change and loss. Accumulated wealth, possessions, or achievements are all impermanent. Life is unpredictable, and attachment to external accumulation makes us vulnerable to disappointment, fear, and anxiety. Awareness, however, allows us to respond with equanimity, recognizing that our sense of self and happiness is not contingent on what we hold or have achieved. By observing reality clearly, accepting impermanence, and cultivating gratitude for what is present, we develop an inner stability that accumulation alone cannot provide. This stability becomes a source of strength, enabling us to navigate life's uncertainties with grace rather than panic. Cultivating awareness over accumulation requires practice and intentionality. It asks us to slow down, reflect, and question the assumptions that drive our desires. Meditation, journaling, mindful observation, and deliberate reflection are all tools that help us develop this capacity. Awareness encourages us to notice our impulses, examine our motivations, and discern between what is necessary, meaningful, and nourishing, versus what is merely distraction, habit, or social expectation. In doing so, we reclaim agency over our lives, shifting from reactive accumulation to conscious engagement with reality. Ultimately, prioritizing awareness over accumulation transforms the way we define success, happiness, and purpose. It is no longer measured by the size of our possessions, the number of our achievements, or the recognition we receive, but by the depth of our engagement, the clarity of our understanding, and the quality of our attention. Awareness allows us to recognize that contentment is already available in the present moment, that meaning is cultivated through presence rather than pursuit, and that the richness of life is found not in what we gather, but in how fully we inhabit each experience. In a world filled with constant distractions, the ability to be fully present is both rare and profoundly valuable. We live in an era where attention is continually pulled in multiple directions. Notifications demand our immediate response, schedules pressure us to multitask, and the mind races between past regrets and future worries. In such an environment, presence is no longer a natural state. It must be cultivated through discipline. Being present is not passive. It is an active commitment to directing attention with intention, to resisting the pull of distractions, and to engaging with the moment as it unfolds. It is a practice that requires effort, awareness, and consistency, because without discipline, presence slips away, replaced by busyness, distraction, and superficial engagement. The first challenge in cultivating presence is recognizing that the mind is inherently restless. Thoughts, emotions, and memories continuously arise, often unconsciously, pulling attention away from the immediate experience. The past beckons with nostalgia or regret, and the future tempts us with anticipation or anxiety. Without discipline, we are carried along by these currents, reacting automatically rather than engaging consciously. Discipline, in this sense, is the anchor that allows us to return to the present. It is the repeated act of noticing when the mind has wandered and gently bringing it back to the current moment, whether through the breath, the body, or the task at hand. Being present also demands the courage to face reality as it is. Distraction is often a refuge, a way to escape discomfort, uncertainty, or boredom. When we discipline ourselves to be present, we confront life directly, even when it is challenging. We feel emotions fully instead of suppressing them, observe situations clearly rather than ignoring them, and engage with people genuinely rather than superficially. This discipline strengthens resilience because it teaches us to endure what cannot be avoided, to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively, and to find clarity amid complexity. Presence is not always easy, but the discipline to cultivate it builds a foundation of inner stability and awareness that no external achievement can replicate. In addition, the discipline to be present enhances the quality of our experiences. Life often passes in fragments, with moments slipping by unnoticed because attention is elsewhere. A meal, a conversation, a walk, or even a simple breath can become extraordinary when we are fully attentive. By training ourselves to focus on the here and now, we deepen our appreciation for the ordinary, uncovering richness and meaning that would otherwise remain hidden. This heightened engagement is a form of mastery, a deliberate shaping of our perception and experience, showing that discipline is not merely restriction, but the opening of a doorway to fuller awareness. Discipline to be present also shapes relationships in profound ways. When we give another person our full attention, free from distraction or preoccupation, we convey respect, empathy, and understanding. Conversations become more authentic, conflicts can be navigated with greater clarity, and connections are strengthened because each person feels truly seen and heard. In contrast, when we engage superficially, distracted by phones or internal thoughts, relationships become transactional, shallow, and unsatisfying. Discipline in presence is therefore not only a personal practice but a social one, a way of honoring others and deepening the bonds that give life meaning. Another dimension of this discipline is its relationship with time. Time, once considered a linear resource, is experienced more fully when attention is disciplined. Moments do not rush past unnoticed, they are absorbed, appreciated, and integrated into memory and understanding. The past is acknowledged without domination, and the future is anticipated without anxiety, because the present becomes the primary lens through which life is experienced. This disciplined engagement with time cultivates both efficiency and contentment. Efficiency emerges because focused attention allows tasks to be completed with clarity and intention, and contentment emerges because the mind is not perpetually longing for what has passed or what has yet to come. The discipline to be present is also closely linked to creativity and problem solving. When the mind is scattered, solutions are elusive, and inspiration is fleeting. By practicing presence, we create mental space where insight can emerge, where patterns are recognized, and where imagination can flourish. Artists, writers, scientists, and thinkers throughout history have understood that true creativity requires immersion, focus, and attentive engagement. Presence is the environment in which ideas germinate and grow, and the discipline to maintain that presence allows the mind to operate at its most effective and generative capacity. Developing this discipline requires both practical strategies and internal commitment. Mindfulness practices, meditation, journaling, and conscious breathing are tools that help train attention and cultivate awareness. Simple habits, such as focusing fully on one task at a time, turning off unnecessary notifications, or setting aside dedicated periods for reflection, gradually strengthen the capacity to remain present. Yet the most important element is not the technique itself, but the consistent, deliberate intention to choose presence over distraction, to resist the habitual pull of scattered attention, and to return to the moment whenever the mind drifts. Discipline to be present also nurtures emotional intelligence. By observing our thoughts and feelings without judgment, we gain insight into our internal patterns, triggers, and desires. This awareness allows us to respond to situations more thoughtfully, manage stress more effectively, and relate to others with greater compassion. Presence becomes a mirror, reflecting not only the external world, but the workings of our own minds, providing clarity that is often obscured by busyness or impulsivity. In this way, discipline in presence is deeply connected to self-knowledge, personal growth, and emotional resilience. Finally, the discipline to be present transforms our perception of life itself. Instead of viewing life as a series of tasks, achievements, or distractions, we begin to experience it as a continuous unfolding of moments, each with its own significance and depth. Challenges are met with awareness rather than panic. Joys are savored rather than taken for granted, and relationships are enriched through full engagement. Presence is not a passive state. It is an active, disciplined practice of participating fully in life, cultivating focus, clarity, and intention at every turn. We spend much of our lives searching for peace, as though it were a destination somewhere far beyond our reach. We chase after circumstances, achievements, relationships, or possessions that we believe will bring tranquility, contentment, or fulfillment. We imagine that once a problem is solved, a goal is achieved, or a milestone is reached, peace will finally arrive, as if it were waiting at the end of a long, difficult path. Yet in truth, peace is not something we find in the accumulation of experiences or the attainment of external conditions. It is not a prize to be won, nor a moment granted only to those who have reached a certain point in life. Peace is not ahead of us, it is not somewhere else, and it is not dependent on external validation. Peace is already here, existing in the present moment, quietly waiting for us to notice it and allow ourselves to rest within it. The challenge lies in the human tendency to project happiness and peace into the future. We condition ourselves to believe that satisfaction is always conditional, dependent on circumstances that may never align perfectly. A promotion must come before contentment. A relationship must be fixed before joy. A debt must be cleared before freedom can exist. In this pattern, we become blind to the reality that the present moment already contains the potential for peace. The stillness we are seeking is not outside of us. It is embedded in the awareness that we are alive, that we are capable of experiencing, and that we have the ability to rest in the here and now. Peace is subtle and often overlooked because it does not announce itself with drama or spectacle. It is not a loud celebration or an extraordinary event. It is the quiet clarity that emerges when we stop resisting what is, the calm that arises when we let go of the urge to control every outcome, the gentle presence that appears when we observe life without judgment. To recognize peace, we must train ourselves to slow down, to notice the spaces between thoughts, and to feel the body and mind as they exist in the present moment. This awareness is not passive, it is active recognition, a deliberate turning of attention toward what is already complete, sufficient, and whole. One of the barriers to recognizing peace is the belief that we must earn it. We equate effort with reward, struggle with merit, and achievement with permission to rest. This belief leads to constant striving, a life lived in motion, always reaching for what is next, always chasing after the illusion that peace resides in future accomplishments. Yet peace does not require achievement, status, or accumulation. It exists independently of external circumstances, patiently waiting for the mind to release its grip on expectation, judgment, and control. By accepting that peace is present already, we free ourselves from the cycle of perpetual longing, and we discover that what we have been seeking externally has been accessible internally all along. The practice of noticing peace begins with simple acts of awareness. It can be felt in the breath as it moves in and out, in the quiet moments between heartbeats, in the sensation of the body resting or walking. Peace can be observed in the sounds of nature, the warmth of sunlight, the gentle rhythm of a familiar routine. These ordinary, often unnoticed experiences are full of presence and tranquility, waiting for recognition. By paying attention, by slowing down, and by consciously engaging with these moments, we cultivate an understanding that peace is not something to be achieved in the future, but something to be experienced in the now. Recognizing peace already present also transforms how we respond to challenges. Life inevitably brings difficulty, uncertainty, and loss. Without awareness, these moments can feel overwhelming, and we may search frantically for solutions, distractions, or escapes. But when we cultivate the understanding that peace is accessible at any moment, we create an inner refuge that is independent of external events. We learn to navigate difficulties with equanimity, to meet uncertainty with calm, and to hold space for ourselves even when circumstances are turbulent. This is not passive resignation. It is the active choice to anchor the mind and heart in what is enduring, rather than in the temporary and unpredictable. The recognition that peace is already here also deepens relationships. When we are anchored in the present, we are able to listen more fully, engage more authentically, and respond with compassion rather than reaction. In moments of connection, we discover that peace is not only an internal state, but a shared experience that can be nurtured through attention, presence, and empathy. By resting in the understanding that peace is available within ourselves, we are less likely to project anxiety, fear, or expectation onto others, allowing relationships to flourish in a space of clarity and acceptance. Another aspect of realizing peace is understanding the impermanence of external circumstances. Challenges, distractions, and emotional turbulence are inevitable, but they are not the ultimate measure of our inner state. By recognizing that peace exists independently of external events, we cultivate resilience, patience, and a sense of stability that is unshaken by temporary fluctuations. Awareness of this inner peace does not remove difficulties, but it allows us to approach them with a sense of groundedness, clarity, and composure that might otherwise be inaccessible when caught in the momentum of reaction and attachment. Peace is also intimately connected to gratitude and appreciation. When we pause to observe the present moment, to acknowledge life as it is rather than as we wish it to be, we open ourselves to the subtle richness that already exists. Every breath, every heartbeat, every interaction, every natural phenomenon carries the potential for recognition, appreciation, and quiet joy. This is not a superficial or forced positivity. It is a deep awareness that life, in its simplest form, contains the essence of peace. By shifting focus from what is lacking to what is present, we cultivate a sense of sufficiency and contentment that does not depend on accumulation, achievement, or approval. Finally, understanding that peace is already here transforms the way we live moment to moment. Instead of constantly planning, striving, or reacting, we begin to move through life with awareness and intentionality. We engage fully with the tasks, relationships, and experiences in front of us. We learn to listen, to observe, and to act with clarity. We recognize that the mind often obscures peace with worry, desire, or distraction, and that returning to awareness is an act of courage and practice. In this state, life is not a series of unfinished projects or unattainable goals, but a continuous unfolding of moments in which peace can be observed, embraced, and allowed to shape our experience.